One area of social development that people may not really think about is the development of self, but it is an important part of social development, and it is something that goes through periods. There are changes in terms of our sense of self. And of course, our sense of self includes things like self-recognition, self-awareness, and self-concept. And again, that may be something that people don't really think about in developmental terms, but babies are not aware of themselves as individuals separate from others. That's something that develops within that first year. And babies begin to develop more of a sense of self-recognition, self-awareness, and self-concept in those first years of life. So this is a topic that we'll come back to as we look at social and emotional development in other stages of life as well. But to start with, the development of sort of self-recognition and self-awareness in the beginning. How do we assess whether or not babies are able to recognize themselves, whether or not they are self-aware? Well, an interesting test that's been used for a number of years to help identify this is what's called the mirror test or the mirror task. And typically the way this test is done is that babies or young children are placed in front of a mirror. One of the things that we know about babies is that they are interested in faces. And so they'll often look at that face in the mirror, show interest in it, stare at it, that kind of thing. So to begin with, those babies will be placed in front of the mirror and they'll be observed as they look in the mirror. But then at some point, when the baby turns away from the mirror, an adult will unobtrusively put a smudge of something like lipstick on the baby's forehead. And then they watch as the baby turns back to see what the baby does when they see this new thing, this smudge of lipstick on the forehead of that image in the mirror. And so what they're looking at is, do babies reach for that smudge, and where do they reach for it? Do they reach for the baby in the mirror, or do they reach up to their own forehead to touch that new thing that they're seeing, the smudge of lipstick on the baby? And it turns out that early on, babies will reach for the smudge in the mirror, but then as they get a little bit older, they'll start to reach for the smudge on their own forehead. And when they do, that indicates that they're able to recognize themselves and that they're beginning to develop a sense of self-awareness. So it's sometime around 18 to 24 months that most babies seem to develop that sense of self-awareness. At the same time, babies are also beginning to use their own name to refer to themselves. They may use personal pronouns in referring to themselves, and they are also beginning to establish some knowledge of age and or gender. That's something that goes along with self-awareness. And so again, it's just the beginnings of a lot of that stuff, but that will continue as they get older. So when it comes to that mirror test, some of the things that we see with regards to that mirror test is that those babies that are in that 6 to 12 month range typically show an interest in a potential playmate. So that's how they see that baby in the mirror. Again, because they're not recognizing that it is themselves in that mirror. And then around 12 to 18 months, they start to show some wariness of that image in the mirror. They're not sure about who that person is, and so they may appear confused. They may try to avoid looking in the mirror as a way to avoid that individual. And then again, around sometime between 18 and 24 months, they begin to show self-recognition by reaching up to touch their own forehead, or in some cases that smudge will be placed on their nose and they'll reach up to touch it there. Now, this development of self-recognition and self-awareness is part of our development of self-concept. And so as we move on into early childhood or the preschool years and then into the school age years and so on, we'll come back and we'll talk more about the development of self and how it plays a role in these things.